We're in round two, everybody.
Hello, hello.
Hello. Well, we thought that we were going live. We were live earlier, but it turned out it wasn't that great. We weren't on, but we're here. So, if this is the first time if you're watching this not live, hi everyone. I'm Hamish.
Hello.
And I've brought with me
Sharif.
Yeah, I brought with me Sharif Shin, as we all know him as. He is the finalist of Trinity Card Capital in Newcastle, and he's kindly jumped on to have a chat about his journey and his wins and loss. Just the one loss.
Yeah, there was the one loss.
Yeah, with Viserai. So another Viserai deck tech, but we're going to go through just some of the little small differences that Shin had, talk a little bit about the journey he had on his event, and if we've got a bit of time, talk about the meta if possible. But hey, how are you?
Good to me.
How you doing, Shin? Are you all good?
Yeah, I'm okay. Not doing great. Had a positive lat flow, so had to cancel the rest of my PTQ season. But I kind of accomplished what I wanted to do with this deck, taking it to the final. There's a tiny chance that I can make the PTQ this Sunday, but I'm not holding my breath. So it is what it is. Happy to have played at TCC. They hold a special part in my heart because they were one of the first shops to hold events back in the Blitz days.
Yeah.
You hadn't joined us, but that's where I played like weekly with Simon, Dyson, Jason, and so on.
Yeah.
So it was great to see them. Also, it was one of the spots where I got one of my RTN wins. So I was really happy to go to Newcastle. Came with a slight downside, but I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
Sleeping most of the day. So yeah, happy to be here.
Good. I'm glad that you're not too unwell. Or are you dying inside?
I'm dying inside. Like, you asked me to do this, and I said yes. And within 10 minutes, I was like, "Oh, this was a mistake." But I asked you that we keep it slightly on the shorter side. However, I ate my chocolate, drank my soup, drinking my water, feeling slightly better. Took the paracetamol, so we'll power through this, and I'm sure it'll be fine.
Oh, don't worry. Shin's a winner, everyone. There's a reason why he's such a strong man. Oh, right, yeah, Johnny. So Johnny Chapman in the chat. Woohoo! Let's go push the point and Shingo. Thank you so much for jumping in, Johnny. So
Hi, Johnny.
Right. So Viserai, I remember helping you. I know we're going to go through this story again, everyone, because we already talked a bit about this, but I'm going to do it again. I helped you talk it to you off the edge, didn't I? Because you were close to giving up all hope.
I had some Starvo fears setting in the day before the PTQ. I had a conversation with Dante where I was finalizing my sideboard plan. He tried to talk me off Viserai. He then proceeded to whoop my ass playing like this random Starvo deck that he just put together quickly. And after that, I was thinking, well, what am I really doing here? Am I just going to go lose to an onslaught of Starvos?
Yeah.
Because we've seen a lot of Prism south in like the south of England, but the north of England has been very Starvo heavy. So even though I did have a game plan, I was going in a field that I knew was going to be very tough. And this is one of the things I really enjoyed this weekend.
Yeah.
It felt like the field has leveled up greatly. We've seen a lot of ex-Magic competitive Magic players join the Flesh and Blood scene.
Yeah.
There are no more easy wins. Like, you need to fight tooth and nail for every win, which is a lot of fun, but also very concerning when you take a deck that you think is really good, but that struggles in one of the main decks this meta, which is Starvo.
Yeah, I know. Starvo's a sod, right? And you were very close to taking him.
I was going to do exactly the same thing you did, which is the night before take both decks with me and then switch to Starvo. But you counseled me for an hour. You petted my head, embraced me, made me feel safe, and convinced me to just take Viserai and only Viserai, which I did, and it worked out for me. I'm starting to believe that our group is really just walking me off the edge. Last season it was taking Dory, this season it's taking Viserai, and you guys are always right, so I'm going to start to not argue as much.
Well, I think it's just more for the... I just didn't want to see you do what I did. which was and I think the whole point of it really was that even if you didn't have a good day, right, with it, you'd at least enjoy and know what you're doing. Even if you had like a matchup, you're like, oh, okay, normal Bravo or Alexi or Adori or just this random matchup. And you go, well, I'll just trust in my ability to know what the deck is. I trust in my skill, and that will see me through. If it's just anyone other than Starvo, then we're all good, right? So
that was a very big selling point, was that I actually find playing Viserai a lot of fun. And this goes back to Nats, when we were testing a lot, and I hadn't switched to Lightning Briar yet. I was testing Dory still.
Yeah.
And you were playing your Tempo Viserai that you took to Nats. And even then I was like, this looks like a more split damage Dory that's a lot of fun to play. So I had been wanting to go to Viserai, then he got Revel and Swarming, and I was like, Viserai is going to be really good this season.
Yeah.
I should put in the hours and the reps. And I did do this, and I still very much enjoy Viserai. I enjoy the amount of lines you have with Viserai and how it's almost solving a puzzle with your hand and what you're trying to do that turn. So I took it because I actually believe it's fun, and I do believe it's competitive. I had a game plan for everything. However, another matchup I was scared of was Rob's chain. So Rob had brought back his chain list, and there was this resurgence of chain. And originally, you and I thought that Viserai could race chain, and in practice, we found out that it didn't work too well. No. So we had to kind of rework the game plan. And you're the one who gave me that game plan that turns out to work barely, but it did work. And it was one of the most intense games I've had.
We have to thank a little bit of Rob Catton on that one, because when it was a discussion that he had when he was chatting away about he just briefly mentioned that Viserai was just fatiguing him, and he didn't tell. I don't think I remember he told me exactly what cards he used to fatigue him, but in my brain was just like, well, sure, it's got to be Rune Blood Barrier, right? He might have told me. I can't remember, Rob. But and I was like, oh, Rune Blood Barrier has got to be the card, right? Because heaps of rune chants that are now shields. It's going to be a real big problem. I did a bit of testing on it, just like a little bit of it, but I'm glad that I was like, you go figure it out. You and then it turned out it was, I think we could probably think of probably a different way of doing it, but overall it was not a bad idea, was it?
It worked. I actually made a bit of a mistake in that game where I didn't optimize my Rune Blood Barrier. And in my head, Rune Blood Barrier is actually a versatile card, right? If you want to add 4 rune chants, if you've played something else before it, it's actually 5 rune chants.
Yeah.
It's a pretty decent card. It doesn't have Go Again, which is its one downside. But if you're fatiguing chain, you're blocking so much that Go Again is not as relevant. And yeah, it worked out. Again, barely. It was against one of our friends, Eek or Craig, who has played Shane since the start, and he pushed me to the limit where I think I had 1 life point, but he had no more deck, and so I was just pushing through the end of the damage and fatigued him at the last second, really.
Oh, good. Right, so let's break this down a little bit, right? So if you've seen my deck tech video that I put up, actually probably around about this time, it should have been about a week ago, maybe a little bit less than that. But there's a couple of similarities that we did with our decks. Yours has got a few different things. You didn't quite like my idea of throwing in lead the charges in.
I mean, you did sell me on the yellow one.
Well, that's the easiest one.
Pretty good.
It's the easiest one to slot in.
But yeah, the extra 3 blues I struggled with. I did make a deal with you, which is I would look at my hand whenever I would get Oath of the Arknight, which is the card you wanted to replace.
Right, okay,
and if I ever wanted a blue lead the charge.
Okay, we're going to do this live. What is your findings, Shin? Did you think, could have done with the blue lead the charge?
No, I did not. But then again, I've only played 1 Prism the whole event, so maybe I just didn't get to really experience it much. But I was happy with Oath of the Arknight. It produced rune chants, most of the time produced 2. It's a good way to cycle your hand. Oath into Swarming is actually really fun. Swarming for 5 go again, pretty good.
Yeah.
Oath also works with the sword, which actually really helped me at one stage, forcing an awkward block from an opponent. So I am not sold on Lead the Charge. I get your logic, and you know that I like being contrarian to you. However, I am going to stick with my 3 yellow Lead the Charges and stop there for now.
That's fine. I remember saying in the video as well that it was a hard one to take out, but I felt like it was necessary. But anyway, so let's go through some of the differences. Okay, so you had Amplify the Art Knight. You went for 3 of them. You weren't really sold on the CNCs potentially, but it was pretty close, I imagine.
It was. So there was a few cards at the end of the day that I was really ready to replace, which was Amplify and Red Spellblade Strike. And I was ready to replace them with 3 CNCs and 3 Consuming Volitions.
Yeah.
And that's because Amplify, in my head, was really meant as a 6+ attack for Prism if they decide to go Herald or pop some Herald, and then as damage, but then CNC obviously has the benefit of threatening Arsenal.
Yeah.
However, the Arsenal this season seems a lot less relevant. Starvo has Crown of Seeds, Prism can have Instants in there, and Chain doesn't always Arsenal.
No.
So Amplify is technically most of the time 7 damage because of Viserai's trigger and it's a Runeblade card.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time it costs 2 instead of 3, and sometimes it costs 1 or 0. So actually Amplify helps me push a lot of damage, and I was happy that I kept it. And same for Spellblade Strike. I wanted Hand Disruption, but I figured to myself that my plan wasn't actually to disrupt my opponent as much as it was to hit them with huge amounts of damage. And Spellblade Strike helps you generate those rune chants because it's 1 from itself, 1 from Viserai, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So, yeah, really solid cards. Really happy that I kept both of those. Wouldn't really change it at this stage.
Well, I'm gonna say this is a little bit contrary, but you're welcome. I remember you were talking.
I expected you to say that you didn't like it, and I was going to say you told me to put it in the deck. But no, it was by your suggestion. However, to be fair, you made me replace Spellblade Assault, which I wasn't sold on, but you had convinced me to put in the first place. So, yeah, you fixed your own mistake there.
I did. Rat King says, really strong list and well piloted. Saw him off in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, Rat King, who is also on the Discord as Biff. It's finally nice to know that Rat King, who Rob Catton is his favorite Flesh and Blood player, if you've ever seen him in chat, to know who that is. But yeah, we played a very close final game. He was on Prism, and I barely eked the win towards the end of the game. And that was part of the reason that then I went for the split in the final, because I knew that his list of Prism was very similar to Isaac's. And it was a lot closer than I actually expected going in today. I have a love-hate relationship with Prism. One of our good friend Jake plays Prism, and I like to poke a lot of fun at Prism, but I actually have a lot of respect for the Prism deck. I think it's one of the best decks in the meta, obviously, and it's doing really good right now.
I agree.
So part of the reason I took Viserai is I knew a lot of the good players were going to be on Prism, and I thought that Viserai countered Prism quite well.
Mm-hmm.
I still think it's the case, but it's not as hard a counter as I thought going into this weekend.
You're missing those Lead the Charges, mate.
Maybe I am, but then I would be shooting other matchups down, so not happening.
You're definitely right there. That's exactly how this game works. The more you think you're sorting out one thing, you're definitely weakening another side. So, but I think that's what makes Vis quite a brilliant hero to play. He's got quite a few good options that he can pick, and you are probably you're trying to balance what type of Viserai deck are you going to walk into the field on. You could, and all of them are pretty good options. You just got to know what your matchups are. What's your event going to be like? Once you got that down and you bring a good deck and you play well on the day and your matchups are good, you should have a good time.
I did feel like I've asked this a lot to yourself and other Viserai players with who I was discussing the list. It very much felt like we were nickel and diming by the end of it, right? We had very similar lists. 90% of the core was identical.
Pretty much.
And we were trying to like eke out those final bits of rune chant optimization or go again optimization. And you did say, you know, those percents do get you the wins because Flesh and Blood is a game of slight edges. And I agree with you in principle, but it did feel like I was driving myself mad overthinking it. And as you said, the deck is good at the end of the day. So let's just take the list that I enjoyed and that worked for me.
Pretty much. Right. Another thing that I wanted to know why you put this in is this Rune Blood incantation.
Yeah, you weren't the biggest fan of Rune Blood incantation. This one was based on a conversation with Jamie or Presto on the Discord. I knew I wanted a Rune Blood generating card. And I knew that most people were playing yellow Read the Runes in that spot.
Yeah.
But I really wasn't sold on having another yellow card. So I liked red Rune Blood incantation. It has Go Again. It
What's
does
wrong with
cost
yellow?
1. It has Go Again. Read the Runes is amazing, but does not have Go Again. Rune Blood incantation has Go Again, which means that it can start your turns off. You know, you actually end up getting an extra rune chant from it. It works with creepers. And also, if you're going tempo, I like the fact that it generates 1 rune chant every turn, because then your rune flashes are discounted and your amplifier discounted and your Ninth Blade, but that's a lot less relevant because obviously Ninth Blade is so expensive that 1 rune chant doesn't change too much, but it can come in handy. And
yeah,
it is one of the cards that I would consider cutting to 2. I play 2 in most of my matchups that it is played in. I rarely play 3. So definitely one of those where it's a bit tricky, but I thought it did well for what I wanted it to do. I had a game where I played 2 Rune Blood incantations, one after another. That was amazing.
Yeah, I bet.
So, you know, it definitely has a slot. I actually value it a lot for the Rune Blood package. So, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, brill. And apart from that, I mean, there's a couple of cards that this is where it got pretty much down to the line of very similar, isn't it? Like, you know, I had 2 Vexing Malices over you having. So you went for 1 Vexing and I went for 1 Dread. You swapped. Yours was O for the Art Knight instead of Lead the Charge, and then your Rune Blood incantations were my Yellow Read the Runes. You had. You had 1 more Skies than me. I don't know what that
I think
was.
I had the Red Skies as well.
Yeah, I had 1. Yeah, I can't remember. You had 2. I can't remember what that one. I think it could have been something. It could have been. I'm not sure. Anyway, but yeah, it's pretty much almost identical. Now, I'll state one last little bit. You're Revel in Rune Blood. So you put that in the sideboard, and what's that? Is that 95% it's in, and what's the 5% it's not in?
It's actually not in 95%.
Revel in 90.
Rune Blood is. I found Revel in Rune Blood to be actually very awkward in spots.
Can be, yeah.
Because of the meta we're in, a lot of the time my plan is to try to build a lot of rune chants towards the start of the game. And Revel in Rune Blood kind of scuppers that plan, right? Because if you play it as a non-attack action, well, there goes your rune chants. But it's also very strong, where it's amazing to get it at the end of the game because it closes the game. So again, it was one of those cards where I played 2 in quite a few matchups, and I would consider cutting the 3rd.
Okay.
Because 3 feels like it's quite a lot. But then obviously, if you're going with the full aggro matchup, which the meta might change where aggro Viz all the time makes a lot of sense, then having all 3 is amazing.
Fair enough. I like that. There's times where I would agree with that. I feel like it's one of those cards though that you could probably you can get around. It's one of those ones that you look at it and you go, oh no, I've got to make this work. can't block with this card, surely. And sometimes, you actually look at it and go, yeah, you could probably just block with it.
Also, I really like it as a bluff card. So, as I said, in a lot of matchup, I run 2. But then my opponent looks through my graveyard, he sees 2, he's expecting 1 extra Revel, which, as you know me, I like those type of mind games where I kind of hide card knowledge as best as I can, and I'll drop a line saying 2 floating or something so that they think, does he have a pummel?
Yeah.
Which is a conversation we've had. I've considered pummel for this deck, and again, you convinced me not to.
I remember I put it in when we were chatting about putting the deck together. And you just went, it's a joke. And I was like, no, I think I'm going to do
it. Because you were just going to go to the event without having tested it. And I was just like, that's not a good idea.
No. Well, I went to an event and took an entirely different deck and didn't test it. So that was an even worse idea. I tell you what, I might as well just put the pummels in. That would have been better. Anyway. So that's pretty much the fine differences of the deck, I can imagine. What was your game plan? So let's go through a little bit throughout the day. Round 1, who did you play? Oh, if you remember the name or hero.
I actually played a local of mine, Callum Burkett, who I knew his deck really well. He's playing a very similar list to KO, his defensive Starvo.
Oh, okay.
And Callum is a really strong Bravo player, right? A very, knows his defensive Guardian plays really well. And I've played against him every week twice for the last month, pretty much these 2 decks, and I have yet to beat him, I believe.
Oh, wow.
So he was my first round opponent, and I was just like, well, this is a great start. This is not going to go well. But I had a better game plan, right? I had made my deck list a lot better, and I was confident going in.
Yeah.
And then he proceeded to actually hit Starvo 3 times in the first 4 or 5 turns, which his deck is not actually meant to do. And it forced me to Sonata Scaletta really early, and then I just couldn't push the final damage. I managed to chip him down to 6 life points, and my deck ran out of gas, so I knew it wasn't going to get anywhere. So right before time was called, I conceded, because if we did have the time to run, it was his win every day of the week. So I lost my first round, which if you followed, if you know me at all, this is how it tends to happen. I go in with confidence and lose round 1, and then question all my life choices.
It's just the most Shin thing I've ever in the Road to Nationals. The mad lad went to how many Road to Nationals did you go to?
4. And
you went and won
3.
And what about the final? I think did you get in the final on the last one, top 4?
No, I got top 8, and one I didn't win.
Oh, okay. Well, it's only a top 8, right? So, and every single one of them that he won lost round 1.
In 2 of them, I lost round 1, and the other I lost 2 or.
Oh, you just sneaking. You were like, I shouldn't really get in top 8, and you did, and then you're like, oh, I suppose let's go and win this thing.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know if I have bad nerves in the first game or if I get too much into my head, but I really struggle with that first game. And the only time I didn't lose my first game in an event was for Nats, and then I proceeded to not win. So maybe that's my secret sauce.
You got top round. 4.
Yeah, but I lost.
No.
No, obviously top 4 was great.
You're up against the Matt Folks. You did well.
I think I went in with Nats with, I have nothing to lose. I'm trying this deck I've never played before. This is on a wing and a prayer kind of thing.
Yeah.
So maybe that was it. Maybe I didn't feel the pressure of, I've worked to test this out. I wanted to do well.
Yeah. I think it's 2 different mindsets, isn't it? So round 1 was against a local, and then round 2, who was that?
Round 2 was, I believe his name is Dan Mills, who was, I think, a TCC local.
Okay.
Who was on Levia, and his goal for the day was to get 1 win on Levia.
Yeah.
And now I actually went in with a lot of fear of that matchup because I had played Chunks, who was testing out Levia and had tried to outrace Levia, and I had gotten like whooped. Like it was sad, really. And from that moment, I knew you actually got to play mid-range against Levia. So I went with that game plan, and I managed to win by him dying on his blood debt. But he had gotten me like really low to 5 life points, where if he did manage to find a way to banish, I was in deep trouble, actually. So very close game. Yeah, Levia is actually a power to be reckoned with. She might need like 1 or 2 extra cards, you know? Like she might need to find her own swarming gloom veil that makes her have less clunky hands at times. But yeah, he knew really well. He knew his deck really well. Obviously, he was a main, and even though I thought I played it really smart, it came to a very close game, and yeah. At one point in my head, I was just like, well, this is it. I'm going to lose, and I'm going to go 0-2, and I'm going to leave, and I'm going to be all sad, going to go back home, play video games. And I had Dan next to me as well, because he also then lost his first round. So I was like, at least like misery likes company. Dan is next to me.
Dan Tripp?
Yes, Dan Tripp.
Oh, man. So, but it wasn't so. So you managed to keep this nerve-wracking train alive. 1-1, round 3.
Round 3 was Chain.
Ooh.
So round 3 was against Craig or Eek on the Discord, who was on Chain, and I had just chatted with him before catching up, and I knew he had played Chain in the Monarch season. He had played Chain for Nads. Like he was very much a Chain main. So I knew it was going to be a very tough matchup, but we had worked on the game plan. It was, can I get some rune chance early and then try to push damage? And if I can't, block, try to fatigue. And he got this really strong early start where he managed to get a lot of a lot of blood debt banishes early on. And the life total was like 34-20 at one point in his favor. And I was like, I gotta embrace this blocking pattern now. Sorry. And I did, and I played a Rune Blood Barrier, and I had 10 rune chance that pretty much killed his turn, right? He didn't push any damage. I managed to keep a few cards in hand, and that's really when the tempo swung. He was banishing 6-7 cards every turn, and I was now able to block because he had run out of Blood Debt cards. So his turn, while still pushing damage, weren't as threatening. And I was able to kind of block it out, survive, go down to 1 life point so that I could start blocking the Arcane with my Skull Cap because I had used my Vexing Quill hand. So the deck had still a lot of blues because I'm not fatiguing, right? I'm actually, with Rune Blood Barrier, I'm actually ended up keeping a lot more cards than him. He's banishing a lot now, so I'm not going to fatigue. And pretty much he ended up with 2 cards and 2 blues in his hand. When he was done with all his banishes, and I still had a third of my deck, and I was able to push the final damage. And again, we got really close to time, and so time was called, and he was kind enough not to block my last sword hit with his last card in hand. So very fair play of him. Very close game again.
Oh, brill, right? So that was 2-1. Round 4.
And we get our first high roll Starvo deck.
Oh, joy.
Going in, I knew this was going to be a tough matchup, right? It's I had tested the deck myself. We know it's explosive. Listening to Johnny's interview was really instructional because he actually gave me the statistic I didn't know, which was 51%. The deck can hit Starvo's effect 51% of the time. If you think about what that actually means, it's a pretty busted deck, as we all know.
Just over 50%. Okay.
But I got a bit lucky where my opponent was hitting his 51% about 50% of the time. But the only thing that saves me in the way I'm playing the matchup is as long as he's not hitting it on a Spinal, Crippling, or Oaken Old, I'm not too fussed about it because I can just block, right? Take some damage and build rune chance. And then we had discussed how many rune chance I needed to go for a Skeleton turn, and we had set on a range of 11 to 16, which is fairly doable within 4 or 5 turns. So as long as they have a slow start, or they don't hit those 3 big threats, we have a way out. And this is what happened, right? He didn't hit Oakenold or Crippling until pretty late. I managed to get a decent Skeleton turn, where I took him down to a life total where his hand was being threatened and pressured. And we started playing, a fair game of Fab, where he actually had to block with 2 cards and then had to swing the hammer or play Channel Lake Frigid, which is a big pain into Viserai, and I had to block with 2 cards and so on. And in that game, a card, again, you recommended that I wasn't sold on was the one that saved me, which was Shrill. Shrill is a lot of damage for very cheap, especially if you have a non-attack action, which I had Mauvrin Sky. So played Mauvrin, played Shrill, Sword, and I'm presenting
a lot of damage.
7 to 11 damage based on the color.
Yeah.
And that's really what swung the turn, is because High Roll Starvo obviously has a lot more 2 blocks than the KO/defensive Starvo.
Yeah.
So it forced a very awkward block on his side, and that was the game decider. Another game decider, which you weren't sold on, but you've done in your deck as well, is the 2 unmovables. I drew one of my unmovables when I really needed it.
Yeah.
And that saved my life.
I mean, the movable is one of those cards that it's amazing if it's in the arsenal, and then if it's not in the arsenal, it's the most garbage card to have. You don't want to see it in your deck because it's going to scuff up your Sonata turn. You don't really want to see it in your hand either, and it just then you've got to play around the unmovable in your hand to do something, and then the second it's in the arsenal, you go, "Thank God, right, I've done it." Now it can just remain there until for the nasty turn. It's a really awkward card.
I will say to whoever is wanting to pilot this deck is keep in mind how many defense reactions you have in there before you Sonata. Ideally, you will have played 3 before you Sonata, and you might hit 1 defense reaction on your big Sonata turns, which is fine.
Yeah.
But just be aware of it.
Yeah, you've got to keep an eye on that. That's why defense reactions are a real nuisance. So, you managed to win that one. It is now what we are you're 3-1 now, so we're now on to round 5. Is this the final round?
It is the final round. We were 32 players, so it was a win and in round. There's only 2 3-2s that would make it, and since I lost round 1, it seemed fairly unlikely. And here I am facing another High Roll Starvo.
Hooray!
This one was against Christopher Mason, who actually is a Scottish player as well, who is from Dundee and Highlander Games. So we had met in the past, and we had discussed our decks at the start of the day. So I kind of knew that he was trying High Roll Starvo, relatively new player to the deck, and he had gone in with pretty much the mindset of high roll equals win and in, and obviously it had worked quite well for him. And so we start the game, and Starvo is doing Starvo things. I'm trying to build as many rune chants as I can. And what ended up happening is I was starting to get quite low on life points. So again, I had reached that range of, I think, 13 or 14 rune chants, where I was just like,
it's good range.
Yeah, it's time to go for it. And I Skeleton, and I hit greatly on the Skeleton, where I actually got 3 cards that had go again. I had some cards in hand, and he had all reds, so he couldn't block my rune chants. And that's all she wrote, right?
Did you not have was it a 9th or a Shrill or Runic?
I can't remember what it was at the end of the day. I think there was definitely a Swarming and a Rune Flash in there. I can't remember what the third attack was, but it just pushed a lot of damage. I believe I had the Mordred Tide as well at the start of my Sonata turn.
That's huge. That's literally Mordred Tide just gives everything, in my opinion, in that Sonata turn. Just go, everything's got +2 to the end of the turn.
And as I said, he had 3 reds, which is 3 of his big threats, like Crippling, 2 Oakenold or something, that were gone. So even though I think he survived, I was a lot less threatened by the deck, and I was able to just out-tempo him the last damage and get the win.
Yeah, nice. So, Shin is now 4-1. All 5 rounds are done. You made it to the top 8. I think where did you come? 4th in the Swiss?
Yeah, came 4th, which was surprising. I thought I would be lower due to my round 1 loss.
You can be surprised actually about that. As long as that round 1 loss isn't a big deal, as long as you don't lose the rest of the time. I think it doesn't matter if round 1 is your loss and your last and your next loss was the final round. I think if those are the two, you're fine. If your first loss is, if you lose the first round and then you lose any other round other than the last one, you should probably get a little bit worried. So that's something that I don't know, pure maths. I think that's just from experience.
I've been told the same, but I still don't fully understand the tiebreaker.
No, I don't. Just win.
Yeah,
just try. You got 1 loss. That's it. The rest of the time you got to try and win. So you're in the top 8. We've got Rat King.
I'm in the top 8, and I got Rat King, who's also known as James.
Known as James.
He was my first Prism opponent, so I was like, finally, I get 1 Prism. This is what I was hoping to get coming into today. This is supposed to be my favorite matchup. And not only do I have a Prism opponent, I have seeding, so I get to go first, which Viserai is really happy to always go first in like 99% of the matchups. So we go first and we start the game, and we get into this very close back and forth where he's like chipping me down very slowly, and I'm taking care of his auras, but he's blocking me out, and he's going into this fatigue matchup where I'm like, oh no, this is bad, because I have been fatigued by Prism before, and the game plan into Prism is not actually to go OTK, it's to just out-tempo them, because if you go OTK they create 10 auras and then you're dead, right? So it's to try and out-tempo them. You have Lead the Charge, you have 10 go-agains in the deck, you have Rattle Bones, you have Creepers, you have a lot of ways to deal with their aura, and you're just pushing damage, and he goes into this defensive game state, which I had experienced once before. So I was aware of it, that he kind of had made that switch mid-game, where I started becoming very concerned that I was going to run out of threats before I was going to manage to kill him. And we got at this stage where pretty much I had a play in my head that was become the Arc Knight, go get a Movren or something like this. And I was like, if you draw your ALS, I lose. Right? And he had pitched out ALS at the start of the game, so we were just about to enter the second cycle, and I was like, I think it's gonna be the next hand. And so I go for my play, and he's like, stop, ALS, and I'm just like, damn. There goes that plan. But I was lucky enough that it took his whole hand to ALS, and I just had enough rune chance to go for the kill. And then he regretted doing that play because he thought, oh, I could have played it differently. So we tried the other option after the game just to kind of see what would have happened.
Yeah.
And I had enough damage where I would have won anyways. But it was good to test it out, and it was just a very close game. And this is what I mean by, I think Prism is becoming a lot more aware of how to deal with Viserai, which is having a small package of Red Heralds, right? Fractal into Viserai is actually a real pain because we've cut down on the amount of 6+ attacks for this list.
Yeah.
And to just start fatiguing them at one point. And it was a very fine balance. He played it really well. And yeah, barely eked the win that I thought was supposed to be much more in my favor. And it made me think, damn, Prism is not an easy it's not an easy matchup.
No, absolutely not. And the thing is that you can, which is the power of Viserai. You can fine tune. I think you can still fine tune Viserai to make that way more favourable. But the cost will be, just pretty much your other matchups. You could probably go, you know what, I can get that one Runeblade incantation. I could probably take that out, maybe put in another 6+. You don't want to mess up your ratios too much. But you've got Lead the Charges that you can lean in on. there's a few things. So Viserai can deal with what Prism wants to do in most situations. But you've just got to make sure that you're not obviously just making this deck really good against one hero, because you have got Guardians in general are a bit of a nuisance to deal with, especially the high roll Starvo decks. But
no, that was
yeah.
Sorry, I was just gonna completely agree with you for once.
As you did.
That was exactly it. If I put in more 6 attacks or more cards that target Prism, I feel like my Starvo matchup gets a lot worse. So I just had to make do with what I expected in the field.
Exactly. So that was sounds like an awesome game. Amazing. Thank you, Rat King, for jumping into the chat, and it sounded like you guys had a great game. It sounded really close, so that's really cool to hear.
Also, it was really nice to meet Rat King, because we had interacted on the Discord. He had sold me a few cards, and a lot of the fun I have in this game is actually meeting people who I've talked to for months, and then being like, "Oh, so that's you." Yeah. So it was nice again to meet the rest of the community.
That's absolutely agree. So you move on to the semi-finals. This is probably are we surpassing your expectations?
We are. We actually definitely are. I think I went in with hoping for a top 8, and then I lost my round 1 win, and my expectations were shot. Like I was joking with another Scottish player who was going back to wait for me, and I would join him on the train, and I ended up obviously not doing that. But yeah, we've definitely surpassed my expectations. But here I am. You didn't
surpass mine. I'm not gonna lie, Shin. The power of your jam is just, it's unreal, because you seem to walk into any sort of event and go, I'm gonna have a miserable time. I'm like, no. This, if I would walk in and go, I'm probably gonna come 10th or something stupid, and it'll be true. And then for this Shin, I'm like, nah, he's getting top 8. Like, it doesn't matter. You could show up, especially when you've been playing something for a while. I was pretty sure you know what you're doing, despite the fact that we were bickering about what's what. But I don't know, man. Like, even when you were going up against all those Bravos, when you told me how many Bravos were there, I was just like, okay. When you got into the semi-finals, like, this is the most Shin thing I've heard of, but I'm still thinking the expectations of where we're probably going is maybe a little bit higher. But we'll get to the semi-finals. In
the semi-finals, I sit against Paul, who is also Ruin on the Discord. Yeah. And he's on a Starvo list, which I'm pretty sure is is very similar to Johnny's list, and kind of this MTG competitive player crew, right? And so I'm just like, I see Chalk Charmers, which is why I think, okay, this is that list, which is not just a high roll Starvo list, but also very tuned to cycling their hands, right? And very tuned to eking every bit of damage. As we saw in that list, I believe, made it to the finals of the Living Realms.
Is it Matt Light? Got to the finals? I can't remember. Sorry.
I'm forgetting the names as well. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really strong list, and a bit more consistent than the pure high roll list. So I'm sitting down against it, and I'm like, okay, well, here we go again. Same game plan as before. Yeah. And I will remember this game as the best Sonata of my whole career.
Oh, wow.
I don't think I'll ever do a better Sonata. I managed to build 25 rune chants before pulling the trigger.
God, how did you... 20? You've won. So, sorry, when you get to about 20 plus, I'm like, I think you've won now.
Yeah. Pretty much, I was just digging for my Sonata at the end, right? I had all the rune chants, and I couldn't draw Sonata. I'm gonna die with all these rune chants. And I actually had a very interesting decision point. When I was around 20 rune chants, I had Mavren and Ninth Blade.
Right.
And I was like, I could just go for it right now with no Sonata and just push a huge amount of damage and try to rebuild a few rune chants and then break Skeleton and Sonata when I do get
it. Yeah.
I decided not to go for it because I did the math and I felt like I didn't have a good follow-up to the ninth blade. Like I didn't have swarming, I didn't have rune flash.
No, it was a two hit attack.
Yeah, so I was just like, let's just wait an extra turn, during which my opponent takes me down to 4, and I was like, well, waiting that extra turn might have been like the biggest mistake.
What was their health total?
I think he was still on 40.
Oh,
and I
know that feeling.
Yeah, he was actually still on 40, and I was on 4 when I actually went for the Sonata turn. But what happened is his first 4 or 5 turns, he didn't get Starvo, and I got my Mordred Read the Runes, go get a Read the Runes, and I built a lot of rune chants really quickly. And all I was missing was the Sonata. And then he started hitting Starvo, but he didn't hit it with Oaken Old or Crippling.
Right.
And it got to the stage where I was like, even if you hit Oaken or Crippling, as long as you don't hit Sonata out of my hand, I'll be fine. And I managed to get my 2 unmovables quickly at the start of the game. So I managed to like delay him, get to 25. He whiffed quite a few times on his Starvo activation.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had another very important decision point, which was he does hit Starvo, and I know his hand is he's coming in for 8 damage. If I take it, I go down to 4, and then I can use my armor to block the hammer.
Mm-hmm.
But he has a Channel Lake Frigid in hand. And another card I don't know. And I'm like, if this other card is an ice card and he plays Channel Lake Frigid, now that I finally got my Sonata, I might lose. But I had 25 rune chants and 2 blues in hand, so I was like, okay, even if it's Channel Lake Frigid, I have enough blues. I'll probably hit a few blues. I'll take them. And then he actually didn't have the ice card, so he pitches Channel Lake Frigid, comes in for the hammer for 4. I block it with the armor, and I go for the greatest Sonata of my life, where I hit like 6 cards. It was like I had a Swarming in hand, I had a Mauvrin Blue in hand, I got 2 blues for resources, I got 2 rune flashes, 1 other Swarming, and 1...
Did you say you got a Ninth Blade?
No, 1 Amplify, and I had a Ninth Blade in Arsenal.
Oh.
Right? So it was just like, I looked at my hand, and I had 9 cards in my hand at this stage, and I looked at him, and I was like, look, I'm going to be honest, I don't think you survived this any way possible, because I also knew he had the Blizzard in hand, but I had 4 blues or 3 blues, and we played it out, and yeah, there was just 60 plus damage.
Did you do the interaction that I always tell you to do whenever you play? You didn't play Meridian Skies, then play Ninth Blade? Did you play Ninth Blade Creeper's Skies?
Yes, I listened to you, and I played Ninth Blade Creeper's Sky, which is your favorite interaction, I know.
It's brilliant.
But it made also a lot of sense, because I knew he had the Blizzard in hand, so I had to be very careful with keeping that action point. But then I also had enough blues to play for the Blizzard, but yeah, I was just being extra careful.
But the thing is, if you had Amplify as well, you could play Ninth Blade, Creeper's Sky, Amplify the Art Knight.
Yep.
And then follow up with the rest of your go
I did.
Yes, I thought.
I believe that's what I did.
Yeah.
And then I think I also had enough to just swing the sword at the end. Just for good measure.
Just for good measure. So that was you absolutely spirit bottomed him out of the semi-finals. And then you get to the finals. And the anticipation of the final conflict of this bloody battle begins.
I get to the finals, and I'm facing Isaac, who I knew had this very strong Prism list.
Yeah.
And he was playing, I believe, the same list as Matt. And Isaac had been like tearing up the field, really, right? He's been in a lot of top 8s, top 4s, finals. He's been doing really well on the 90-day XP grind. And obviously just trying to get his invite for the PTQ. Now, I already have an invite for the PTQ by Lifetime XP. And sadly enough, I can't even go to the Pro Tour.
No.
So when he offered me to split the prize, and I was like, wait, I can make the last train back home? I was like, sure, let's split the prize. And I conceded so that he can get the invite. No need for us to burn an invite and not have another UK player go to the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
So I ended up conceding. And also, I will be honest, I was slightly scared of the deck. He had the higher seed, so he was going to get to go first. And if he plays like 2 auras turn 1, it's gonna be a long day, you know.
Yeah.
So it felt like a safe bet to just take the split, and I was really happy with that. And then we revealed the gold foil, and it was Snapdragon Scalar's gold foil. So I was just like, perfect. This covers all my PTQ expenses and a bit more. So all in all, a very good day's work, you know.
Fantastic. So I will say, so Larry M in the chat has said we don't think you're going to any more pro quests. Not sure. See how it goes. But is there any changes that you would have planned for next weekend? Is there any little tweaks that you might have thought to put in your day?
Larry is actually the other Scottish Viserai player, one of the other Scottish Viserai players I was mentioning.
Hi, Larry.
Who has been working with me on this list a lot. Right? We've been kind of soundboarding ideas off each other.
Oh, okay.
I really like this list. I think it fits my playstyle a bit more because I like being the aggressor. I like having the cheap attacks and kind of leaning into the tempo mindset, even if I might try to go mid-range. So I really enjoyed this list. I did mention at the start, I might want to change one Rune Blood Incantation and one Revel, because I mainly play 2 in most of my matchups. But I don't know what else I would switch them for. So yeah, I will say I definitely wouldn't take out the Lead the Charges Yellow, because I know that Larry wasn't sold on them fully. Lead the Charges Yellow were amazing. So no, I would keep this list. The change I was actually planning on making was to not play Viserai for the rest of the PDQ season. But obviously, now that I'm feeling the way I am, I think I'm just gonna focus on Blitz, because hopefully I'll be back to health for Battle Hardened. So maybe it's time to revisit Blitz decks. And if I do make it to another PTQ, I will probably just bring this deck list as is.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Or maybe I'll try Prism. That was the plan B. It was always to just like crash course Prism for a week.
Oh, Prism's been solved. Boring. Play Axis Story.
Well, no, I wouldn't go with the 27 Aura list. I really like the list that has a bit more Herald packages. So yeah. I would do it slightly differently.
Oh, so Johnny Chapman has just jumped in. Oh, and aloha, James Ashall. Johnny Chapman saying, does the threat of exposed to the elements make blocking with Skeletor an issue? You block with it as if it was the difference between a crush or an oaken break point. It's a good point. It's caught me out, and it does make you go, well, that's that. But
so the other one was also Mango. I saw a few Starvo players playing Mango that had me really concerned blocking with my Skeletor, but Mango is a lot more just like not blocking on that turn, right?
Yeah.
I always forget the text on exposed to the elements, so let me just.
So exposed to the elements is basically it's an instant, costs 2, maybe 1 or 2, but if you fuse it with ice, target player destroys an armor with zero armor on it, and the green one, which is actually the threatening one, where it slaps a -1 armor point on the Sonata. So if you block with the Sonata and they fuse it with Earth, it is dead. That's the scary one.
I'm gonna regret saying this, but that sounds terrifying, really.
Yeah.
I did not play around it too much. I do think the deck runs enough blues that worst comes to worst, I should have 2.
No, you can't. But it's not the ice that you got to worry about. It's the Earth, because the second you block with the 2, and because Skeletor has temper.
Oh, got you. It's if you're blocking on the turn that you're blocking. Sorry, yeah. I was more worried about the. I think if I'm blocking with the Skeletor, I would be careful not to block when they have 2 floating, right?
Yeah.
I guess then they could just be threatening a hammer, which you do throw in the block. I've tried not to overthink it, I guess.
I think you can see it.
It is concerning.
Yeah, I think it can catch you out. Yeah, it can catch you out. But I think it caught me out once when I was testing with it, and then I just went, oh, well, if you're playing Starvo, you're going to show me some of your hands, and if you've got 2 floating and a Earth card sitting about, you kind of just go, well, you know, you can see it come in most of the time. You can get caught out if it's sitting around in Arsenal, but sometimes it can absolutely scuff your game plan if you don't know it's coming.
I will say that I end up blocking with Sonata as a last resort, right? Like, you block with your helmet first, you block with your gloves first. Sonata is really meant as you're either gonna... Sorry, I end up blocking with Skeleton as a last resort. You end up blocking right before you go Sonata, or what I'll do is I normally just block with Skeleton on the hammer, which means that you don't have those floating, right? Because that hammer swing is when Skeleton is the most efficient. So I guess it never really came into play because I'm always like, oh, hammer for 4. Here's a 2/2 block with Skeleton.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So Mason was saying they have to ice and earth fuse it. Well, yeah, Mason, it's not so much when that we've got it sitting on one and they're actually going to do the whole effect. It's because Skeleton has temper. When you block with its full 2 block, they could fuse it with earth and then it will put a -1 counter on it, and then you block with it, and because it's got tempo it will blow up that way. That's the most scary interaction. Other than that, it's actually it's not actually that much of a problem. But yeah, Shin, you've given me way more time than than you were meant to.
I would.
You haven't
I was just
actually
about to ask if we can wrap it up because I'm starting to struggle here.
No, we're good, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this lovely stream with Shin. It's given pretty much another Viserai deck tech. Now we're going to hopefully calm down on the Viserai now, because I think, well, the two people that probably there's loads of Viserai, it's not just us two, but the two people that I know that I've practiced with quite a lot, well, not myself, but me and Shin did a lot of Viserai chat, and and Shin went and stole my crown, didn't he? I go to a pro quest and I'm like, oh god, I suck. You go to 1 and you're like, finalist, wee.
we do joke about this a lot, but you were a big reason to why I wanted to play Viserai, is because you started whooping my my butt with it, and I was just like, this looks like a lot of fun, let me try Viserai. And then my local meta started having a lot of Viserai with Larry and David, and I was just like, well, obviously it's a good deck. I have the cards for it now. And I had missed on the Chain Train because I didn't have the Runeblade cards, and I was just like, well, I'm not going to miss on another Runeblade. So let's go for it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Well, regardless, we should have some other deck techs coming up from Trip. I think we're going to start looking into the Prism stuff, seeing what those matchups look like, and some of the deck techs from some of the winners out there. Check out episode 22 where we had Johnny Chapman on, and he was discussing his Starvo plays. Awesome. Again, thank you so much, Shin. Thank you so much for everyone for jumping on to push the point and having a chat about your flesh and blood experience during this ProQuest season. You're all
thanks
awesome.
Again for having me. Always a pleasure.
Never a chore.
Thanks for joining us, and see you all very soon.
Yeah, man. Peace out.